Hi everyone, welcome to Tile and Cork. We are Amy and Josh, and we moved from Austin, Texas to Lisbon, Portugal last year with our two kids. And we're here sharing our experiences moving abroad with you.
Now, the video today is actually from a viewer question.
Yeah, viewer requested.
Video about education.
Yeah, we know a lot of you that watch our videos have kids. You're planning on moving to Portugal. You're wondering what schooling options look like here in Portugal. So we are here to talk about the schooling options you have when you move to Portugal.
A lot of this video today is based on our own research as well as our own experience. We certainly met with schooling professionals before we moved out here, as well as watched a lot of webinars and videos, and so we want to distill what we learned into this video so that you don't have to do so much work.
Okay, so we are discussing the four main types of schooling options you have here in Portugal. So we're going to talk about public, private, international, and homeschooling.
Let's start with
Homeschooling?
not something we do or want to do.
No.
We don't have the time, expertise, or patience.
But we do know some of you that are looking to move here to Portugal, maybe homeschool back in the US, or if you don't, you are still maybe looking at homeschooling your children when you move to Portugal.
Sure. You might get here middle of the year, or want to take some time to see what your options are and maybe try homeschooling for that period of time.
So I think we, again, are not experts in this. There are groups online that specifically deal with homeschooling in Portugal because you can do it. Like, it is an option. Right. But there are rules and regulations around homeschooling here in Portugal.
There's definitely some obstacles, some hoops you have to jump through. It's not like perhaps some places in the United States where there's minimal guidance or regulation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, some of the minimum requirements you have to meet to homeschool is you have to have an undergraduate degree.
Yeah, you as the homeschooling parent need to possess an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree as well, but you at least need to have an undergraduate degree.
And it can be in anything. So
yeah, it doesn't have to be in education. Another big thing that you have to do is you actually have to typically register your kids with a school here in Portugal, whether that's a public school or an international school, because you're going to kind of be following along with that same curriculum that they're teaching at the school, but you're just teaching it to your children in a way that you might think they learn best.
Yeah, you have to submit your own plans, what you're going to be teaching, as well as doing testing and also progress reports.
Yeah, so it's not just a, hey, you want to homeschool your kids, go and teach them what you want to teach them, and that's the end of it. You actually, there are, like we said, rules and regulations. So just something, if that is an option that you are looking into, you will want to research that yourself in a lot of detail to make sure that you are in line with what you actually need to do here in Portugal.
So if you want to blend the bureaucracy of being a teacher in a public school, as well as spending even more time with your children, hey, that might be, homeschooling might be for you.
It might.
Okay, next on the list, international schools. What are international schools exactly?
Good question. So these are typically going to be schools that teach a lot of times in English. And
they cater to multiple nationalities.
Exactly. Now, there aren't necessarily a lot of American international schools here in Portugal, but there are British international schools. I think there's some French international schools. But a lot of times you are going to have classes in English with, some Portuguese classes mixed in there. But I think typically, primarily, the primary teaching language is going to be in English a lot of the time. Yeah, so this is a good option if you have older kids that, are not used to speaking Portuguese, don't really know the language, and you are wanting to kind of give them the softest landing here in Portugal.
Also, if they're close to graduating age, typically in a Portuguese public school, they would have to be doing testing, all in Portuguese, and that could be really difficult.
Yeah.
They have to meet some pre-requirements for those tests too. So typically, from what we've read, if you have kids that are teenagers, 15, 16, 17, international school might be best. best.
Yeah, I mean, even if you have some, younger age kids too, like, I mean, you might prefer international school just based off of what is right for your kids and just, what kind of, like I said, what kind of landing you want them to have here in Portugal.
Mhm.
You can always switch to a public school or private school later, but you might start out in an international school while your kids are kind of learning the language and picking it up.
Mhm.
And international schools are a great option if maybe you're only planning on moving to Portugal for a couple of years. So if you are just kind of here temporarily, international schools might be great for your kids because they can still learn in English and maybe aren't doing the whole Portuguese thing for a couple of years if
Mhm.
you're planning on then moving back to the United States if that's where you're from or whatever country you're from. So that might be an option.
Right.
Well, there are some cons with international schools, and I think one of the biggest cons is international schools are extremely expensive.
Mhm.
Like we are looking, I think some of them might be, I don't know if it's 1,000, 2,000 euros a month. So I think it just really depends on the school and the location, but the cost for international schools is very high. I think another con certainly is that a lot of these international schools are teaching in English. And so your child might not be learning as much Portuguese, even if they might be taking a Portuguese class, they're not immersed as much. I've heard, reports of people who've had their kids in international schools for years and their kids, barely know any Portuguese because they are not really learning and being immersed in it.
Right.
So that can be a con if you want your children to be, more integrated into the community and Portuguese language. So definitely a con there. Another con with international schools is that they're not, in every neighborhood. So, depending where you're living in Portugal, you may or may not have an international school close
Right.
to you. Even in Lisbon.
Which means a commute.
Exactly, a commute. Even in Lisbon here, there are certain areas that tend to have clusters of international schools more than other areas. And so depending, you might need a car to get to that international school. That means dealing with traffic, a commute, all that stuff. So it can kind of be a hassle to take your kids to an international school if you don't have one close to you. And then another con with international schools is that a lot of times they have waiting lists. So typically you might be signing your kids up for international school well in advance. There might be an application process with that. So with an international school, you're typically having to prepare a lot in advance. Now, a pro, though, that we didn't really talk about is that you could sign your kids up for international school well in advance of ever moving to Portugal. So your kid might have a spot in this international school, they're going to be starting. So you've kind of got that piece of the puzzle squared away before your move.
Which, compared to public school, you can't do until you actually have a physical address here.
Right. Okay, so we are going to talk about our next schooling option, which is private school.
Private school. How is that different from international school?
Well, private school, a lot of the private schools here are actually Portuguese private schools. So they're still going to teach primarily in Portuguese, but, they might be private for, whatever reason, the certain, learning style that they're focusing on. For example, you can have Montessori private schools, more forest schools. I know some people are interested in that type of thing, or religious private schools. So, private schools can just, be focused on a different type of teaching style or religious aspect or whatever that is.
And so another son is in private school because he started in a preschool year and there were no public preschools that had seats for him. So that was our only option.
So we put him in a private school, so we have some experience with that now. Okay, so one good thing about private schools is you do have a choice on where your children go. Just like international schools, you can choose to, apply for a private school or see if they have spots. And these are ones that you can sign up for well in advance of a move to Portugal. Another benefit, you do have to pay for a private school, but the cost for private school is typically a lot less than international school. And then we'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about public schools. But private schools typically follow a very similar calendar as a public school system. However, one benefit is that they typically don't have strike days. Strike days are something that happen in the public school.
That's where, staff or teachers might go on strike. And unlike in the United States where they say we're going on strike until we get our demands met, they have a single day that they say, unless we have our demands met, we're gonna strike on this day, and you don't know if they are until you get there, but it typically only lasts a day.
Yeah, and I will say with the strike days too, it's not usually a complete surprise. You know in advance that there could be this strike day happening, so you can prepare for it. Know that your children may be home from school that day.
Mm-hmm.
But with private school, that is not something that occurs, so you do not have to worry about strike days as part of the private school system. Okay, so there's just a couple of cons with private schools too. I mean, one, they obviously have costs associated with them, like we talked about. The second con is that, of course, they do have waiting lists. So your child might not be guaranteed a spot in a private school. You still might have to apply, have waiting lists, all that type of stuff. And then I think just another con is that, you may or may not have one in your neighborhood. There are more private schools than international schools, it seems, but still, you might be having to commute or drive to one that might be a little further away from you, especially depending on what type of private school you're looking for your child.
And I would say that with these private schools, you have a little bit more flexibility if you say wanted to pull your child out of one school and put them into another one that's maybe closer.
Yeah.
Once a spot opens up, so you have a lot more flexibility than you do with the public school.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about public school. When we moved here to Portugal, that was always our intent, to have our kids put into public school.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because of their age. When they moved here, they were 5 and 7, 4 and 6.
Yeah, 4 and 6.
They were turning 5 and 7, and we heard that was a good age to integrate them into a new culture and a new language. Let's talk about public schools. Of course, number one benefit, it is free.
Yes, that is a huge benefit.
And along with their school day, they have an included after-school program, which introduces a lot of topics like art and science and drama and roller skating and skateboarding and stuff like that. That's again included, so that if you're working a full day, you can pick up your child later than school actually ends. And unlike, I think, a lot of programs in the United States, again, this one is included.
Yeah.
At least that's our experience. This is in Lisbon. It may be different in other areas. But
yeah, I think, in the U.S., we were so used to our daughter getting out of school at 2:45 every day. Mm-hmm. That was when the school day ended at her school, so we would have to pick her up then, and then, have activities for her until 5 o'clock right. when we picked up our son from daycare. But here, her pickup time is at 5 because of the after-school programs that they have at the school where they get to do a lot of fun stuff. Also,
as a side note, this school schedule here, public school schedule, is a lot nicer, a lot more accommodating. In the U.S., she, as a kindergartner, she went to school from 7:30 in the morning to 2:45.
Mm-hmm.
Here, she starts at 9 and is done at 3, but then she stays in the after-school program till 5. So
yeah, and it depends on the age of the children too, because as you get into some of the upper grades, there are days where they only might be going for 2 hours in the afternoon in the public school. Like it really changes as they get into those older grades. But for the younger grades, at her age, it's pretty steady and really nice.
Yeah.
I think, also the benefit of public school is that she is really getting to integrate into the Portuguese community. And through that, we are meeting parents that are Portuguese because that, it is locals that are going to her school. She's actually I think she's the only American at her school. And so because of that, she has Portuguese friends. We talk to her friends' parents. We'll go get ice cream after school some days or go play at the park. And so it's helping us develop a little bit of a community here in Portugal too.
They also have, Portuguese as a second language classes. She gets that a couple times a week. But so she does have those options to learn extra Portuguese at school. And they also start teaching English in the 3rd year here. So,
yeah.
That's something that hopefully she'll excel at when she gets in there. But it also means that some older kids will speak English. And honestly, her friends speak a little bit of English as well.
Yeah, so
Even in her first and second year.
yeah, so it's nice. She gets to kind of her friends get to practice their English with her, and she they help her with Portuguese words and everything. So she can, really kind of make friends that way too. So I think, like for our daughter and her age, it's been really helpful. And our son will also be going to public school probably next year. But, if your children are kind of those beginning years, maybe like first, second, third grade, putting them straight into Portuguese public school might be great. If they're a little bit older, that even it still might. But again, like if your children are a lot older and don't know any Portuguese, like junior high age or above, it really might be harder for them. Now they still probably actually will make friends easily because they'll have friends that speak English since they do start learning it in the third year here. But, they'll still be taught classes completely in Portuguese and everything. So for them to take tests and be able to excel at that, it might be a little difficult. I will say, like, obviously every child is different. So some children may do fantastic in a public school in junior high, but others may not. So, you know your kid best. And I think it's just, something to consider.
Even our kids are completely different from each other. And if they were older, I could see where they might excel in different environments. And we have heard, people who have 3 or 4 kids that they have learned at different rates and at different schools, and sometimes they move them from one school to another. So, it's a toss-up, just like anything.
Yeah.
But I'd say it's certainly worth trying. And the quality, at least of our school, is quite good.
Yeah. But of course, there's cons of public school. So I think one of the biggest cons for me is just, again, we are learning Portuguese, but we don't speak it or understand it well enough to really sometimes communicate like we need to with the people at the school. Because some of them, some of the support staff, different people don't speak English at all. And so communicating with them sometimes can be a challenge if we need to, deal with an issue.
And I think, certainly in settings too, where it's the teacher's talking to the group of parents, like orientation or PTA type meetings, we might catch a few of the words, but, they're also very specific towards schooling and subjects and things that we're not really up on as far as Portuguese language. So even though I might get some words, context goes over my head, and I have to rely on other parents to tell me what just happened.
Yeah, so we have been relying on other parents from time to time, and all the parents at the school have been very helpful. But it can, be a challenge when you just don't understand things that are being said in meetings, and all that type of stuff.
But it's also an incentive for us to learn more Portuguese. So.
Absolutely. Another con is that you don't get to choose the exact school you want your children to be in. So we know a lot of people when they're moving to Portugal are like, hey, I want to, figure out what public school, I want to tour public schools or figure out what public school I want my child to go to. And that's not really as much of a thing here with public schools. You can kind of maybe select a few that you would like your child to go to that are in your area. You have they kind of have to be in your area, but you can't really say this is the school I want my child to go to. And so it is more about kind of like in the U.S., public schools are based off of your location, and the same is true here in Portugal.
The process for us is we had to submit a list of 5 schools in our area and rank them in the order that we would want her to attend. And they go through the list and see if there's a spot. Now she started after school started, so we actually got our 5th school, which turned out to be, it's fortuitous for us because it turned out to be a great school.
And then, of course, one of the cons we already talked about is public school has strike days.
Yeah, unexpected days where the kids might be home from school. Oddly, they tend to be on a Friday, usually a Friday before a holiday. So you can, kind of figure out when those are going to come.
Yeah.
You just roll with them. It's fine. So that's a not so brief overview of the school systems of Portugal. We are also working on another video to address some other questions we've had about the public school system and also our own experiences that we've had with our kids registering, finding schools, what the kids do during the day, how do lunches work, and language and all these other things. So we are working on another video, should be out soon, addressing a lot of those more specific questions that you might have regarding schools. If you have a question that you'd like us to address in that video or a future video, please put in the comments. We're happy to receive them and talk about them.
Thanks for joining us. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel if you want to see more videos like this.